Going by the records, United Nations Development Programme UNDP says every country needs to act immediately to prepare response and recover from the ravaging coronavirus. The United Nations system also assured that it will support countries through each stage with a focus on the most vulnerable, drawing inference from the experience with other outbreaks such as Ebola, HIV/AIDS, SARS, tuberculosis and malaria, as well as long history of working with the private and public sectors. UNDP says it will help countries to urgently and effectively respond to COVID-19 as part of its mission to eradicate poverty, reduce inequalities, and build resilience to crises and shocks. UNDP Administrator Achim Steiner says, and I quote, "We are already hard at work together with our UN family and other partners on 3 immediate priorities: supporting the health response, including the procurement and supply of essential health products under World Health Organization's leadership, strengthening crisis management and response, and addressing critical social and economic impacts." On the program, we shall be looking at UNDP's response on COVID-19. How are things evolving with the Basket Fund? My guest is United Nations Development Programme UNDP resident representative in Nigeria, MOHAMED YAHYA. Diplomatic Ties continues shortly. Stay with us. Well, let me begin by saying, what are your impressions coming from the UN system, looking at the national response, regional response in Nigeria so far on COVID-19?
Well, the response so far has been good, in the sense that we have a saying in an African saying that says, "You can only kill a snake with the stick you have." So essentially, the starting point was a situation whereby the health system in this country wasn't at the level that it should be to be able to respond to a pandemic. However, the response itself, considering the disadvantage in terms of where we started, has been quite good. The setting up of the Presidential Task Force, understanding that this is a health crisis, but it's also health plus. Essentially, it's also a political crisis in terms of fiscal ability of the government to respond with the crash of the oil prices. So it has that component. It has a social component in the sense that people have been told to stay at home, impacting their livelihood and not being able to look after their families. So there's a lot. It's not essentially what I'm saying is not only a health crisis, it's a social and economic crisis as well. So the response quickly, where the president set up the Presidential Task Force, has been quite good in understanding this is beyond health. So that has been good. The response of the Health Ministry and NCDC in doing what they can, the response of the states, especially the index states such as Lagos, setting up isolation centers, and the move from 5 laboratories to 18 now over a short period of time. All those, I think, is something that should be commended and something that the country has been able to do very well. But I've said in my preamble that the starting point was a health system that wasn't invested in over decades, and I think that is something we need to rethink after this crisis ends.
Do you see it just as a Nigerian problem or an African problem?
The healthcare system is an African problem. There are some countries who have done better, but overall, the percentage of GDP to the investment in the healthcare has been very, very small. And I think as a development actor myself, one of the things that I will be passing messages to elected officials is to say, roads are important, infrastructure is important, but people's health is equally important. So how do we ensure in the future we learn from what COVID exposed in relation to ensuring that we have robust healthcare systems and that people are healthy and resilient to withstand any similar crisis in the future?
One worry across board has been the fact that in Wuhan, for instance, they set up one huge clinic or hospital within a space of weeks, and at the end of the challenge, they converted it to a world-class infectious disease hospital. Now, sustainability-wise, what's your advice?
Well, my advice starts with it's a good time to pause and reflect. When you go through a crisis, it exposes some of the weaknesses you have, structural weaknesses. And once the crisis ends, and I think the president is putting a task team together, I understand, to look at what has COVID exposed. COVID has exposed over-reliance on oil, exposes you to shocks. And the oil prices, when the 2020 budget was done, was pegged at $57. We're now around $20, partly because of the COVID situation. COVID has also exposed the weak healthcare infrastructure. Not enough ICU beds when we started. Very few labs. Things have improved, but where we started, there's so much to learn. And I always say, and I tell my team, and this is one of the things that we will be supporting the country, is how do we see this crisis that Nigeria had nothing to do with it, is imported, it's a global crisis. How do we take advantage of it in terms of revisiting all our systems in this country and saying, what is it that we need to do better? How do we change our economy? How do we build a better, healthy society? And I think this is where the debate should go after this.
You work hand in sync with the Presidential Task Force on COVID-19, and we'll get to the other side of it. What's your impression so far working with the team?
Brilliant. I mean, I think that in terms of the capabilities, the thinking, the people who lead it are very, very, very experienced, not only from a Nigerian side, but also they have a global experience. I work very closely with Dr. Sani, Dr. Chikwe of NCDC. You cannot fault anything in terms of their know-how, experience, and where they need to go. And obviously the overall leadership of the Honorable Minister Boss Mustafa and others who are also involved. I think all of them have the capabilities and experience and know-how to be able to push. And so far, as I said, the results of a very few weeks in terms of infrastructure, around 5 labs to 18 labs, the ability to track and all this. So there's been a lot of improvement, and so far so good, in my opinion.
Would you think a PPP modem after COVID-19 to manage these labs over time would make sense?
You mean the new labs that were...
Yes, after COVID-19, if we inject a public-private partnership model to run them for sustainability.
So I really don't have, personally, I'm a development actor, I will leave that to the health sector. The health sector are much better place to answer those questions. For me, the only thing I will say is that there is an opportunity to see that we need to invest in people first before we invest in things. And I mean things, infrastructure things. I think first, for a country to develop, investing in people and having a healthy society will be extremely important. And I think the government is very much in line with those thinking now, and hopefully after COVID we revisit in terms of how do we have a stronger healthcare system.
Okay, let's go to the big one. When UN saw that Nigeria, like you said, has put in place a template to run and manage COVID-19 the way it is run, and you're working the team, we heard so much about the UN Basket Fund.
Yeah.
And the UN Basket Fund, from records, is domiciled with the United Nations Development Program, UNDP, where you are the resident representative in Nigeria. So I ask you now, the Basket Fund, how far, how well?
Well, so first to say that the government has set up several streams of funding. There's the government budget itself. The government has been very quick in allocating resources. Private sector, you've seen how the private sector has come together through this central bank, put financing together to support and show the solidarity that the private sector has with the people in this country. And then the UN at the end also came together and said we will put a UN basket fund to respond, to support the efforts of government and to support the efforts of the private sector. So I am the one from the UNDP side who were trusted by the UN system and the resident coordinator system to manage the basket fund. So far so good. We have been able to mobilize resources over $60 million, and I just said that most of it is from the European Union. The generosity of the European Union is impeccable, in my opinion, considering that we are in a global pandemic where each country is affected, and very few countries are looking outside beyond their own problems. having the European Union say, here is 50 million euros. I stand with Nigeria and support the Nigerian fight against COVID. Has been an unbelievable solidarity. So from that side, we are glad to be able to manage the fund. We will be allocating resources through a board. It's important that the viewers understand that there is a board that is co-chaired by government and the UN resident coordinator, and the development partners who put money in it. So they will all be sitting this Wednesday to look at initial allocations, and we want to move very fast because the needs are high. So there's few proposals that are coming in, and I just want to assure the public that all this will be public. They'll be able to follow. It will be on social media. It will be on website. We will share to know where the basket fund resources have been allocated and for what.
You know, when the basket fund was made public and announced, and donations started coming in, we heard of I think the $2 million from UN, right?
Yeah, 2 million. Yeah.
2 million US, and now we had the 50 million euros from EU, which is an equivalent of 21 billion naira. Yeah. And there was just interest from the public. So when you say to be transparent, what are the safeguards to ensure that the money is properly spent? So first, it goes to who should benefit. So
let me add on who else has put to be transparent in terms of who else is funding the basket fund. Aliko Dangote Foundation has put 1.5 billion naira into the basket fund, in the UN basket fund. We are now in discussions with Gates Foundation, the UK Aid, the British are thinking, and hopefully soon we will have them on board. And others like MacArthur Foundation also thinking of coming. So it's attracting a lot of both private and member state, UN member states funding the basket fund. In terms of transparency and how we allocate, as you probably know, the UN, we have everything public. We're a strong believer as sunshine as the best disinfectant. You put everything out. We have processes in how this works. Applications come. When they come to the board, first is a technical committee that reviews whether the application are in line, and all allocation against the government multi-sectorial plan, majority health. So most of it will be on surveillance, procurement of health equipment such as PPEs, procurement of ventilators, procurement of testing kits, which are extremely important. So most of it will go there. And then the rest of non-health allocation will be around cushioning the impact of COVID on most vulnerable people, urban poor. How do we ensure that the urban poor who rely on working day to day, or they call it hand-to-mouth jobs?
Hand-to-mouth, yeah.
Yeah. How do we ensure that they are cushioned against the impact of COVID? So some resources will be going there. So we have both the socio-economic impact, which is a small part, but the biggest part of that will be to fight the virus. And all this will be on social media. I'll be sharing all this information soon through the UNDP and the UN system websites and social media handles. And we will make sure that the public know who got the money, how much they got it, and to do what. And they can all follow up and see how this has been applied.
So there's no cause for worry?
No, certainly not. We have a very robust UN systems. Over 60 years been set up systems to make sure that we're efficient, we allocate at the right places, and follow the government priorities, which is really, really important. It's important for people to know that we're here to support Nigeria, and we follow Nigeria's priorities in terms of allocation.
Quite a worrisome global challenge, I must say. And I've asked this question to AU, ECOWAS, EU, and I will ask you now, UN. Governance challenge arising from COVID-19. How can we surmount this even after COVID-19?
You mean governance challenge in relation
to global governance challenge?
Yeah, I mean, one of the things about COVID-19, as I said, is it exposes all pre-existing conditions. It's not only a pre-existing condition in terms of your physical health against the virus, but also your institutional and your economy, your social structures. It exposes everything, and I think this is why I think while the virus is having a devastating impact on people who are losing their lives and their livelihoods. People are losing life and livelihoods. So how do we rethink about the governance structures and the systems for me, a country like Nigeria is the most important country in Africa, is the largest economy. This is where most Africans live. So getting it right, both institutionally and after this, and getting the economy and the social structures right will be extremely important. And I think the country has unbelievable opportunity that is never had since 60 years of its independence to rethink the economic structures it has and the social structures it has to make sure that we are not exposed to another global shocks in the future. And I want to emphasize this, 60-65% of the federal budget is oil. When you export oil as the main source of your expenditure, budget expenditure, then you are at the mercy of global markets. So how do we move from there to diversify this rich country as economy to make sure that the future is one that is most internally reliant and much more diversified, and a specific shock doesn't have the similar impact. So I think it's a big opportunity. One other fantastic opportunity, I always like to look at the positive, or even in a crisis such as COVID, is the African Free Continental Trade, the Continental Agreement that was signed only about a year ago, when Nigeria became a signatory in Niger, Niamey, when President Buhari signed it. There, the opportunity for regional integration, regional trade, this is the time. If there's any other time to trade and engage and work across the continent, this is it, I think. And I think the African economies will be in some serious damage after this, including, unfortunately, the Nigerian economy because of the COVID impact. But I think looking for new avenues, new ways of doing business, new ways of trading, new ways of building wealth and opportunity. And within that context, the African integration agenda and the continental free trade is that platform that we should take advantage of.
Well, let me go back to UN now. Quoting your colleague, UN Administrator Achim Steiner, maybe you help me elucidate this. We are already hard at work together with our UN family and other partners on 3 immediate priorities: supporting the health response, including the procurement and supply of essential health products under World Health Organization's leadership, strengthening crisis management and response, and addressing critical social and economic impacts. Can you break it down again?
Yes, essentially what he's saying is that this crisis, the UN, and here in Nigeria is a good example, the UN got together very quickly. I am very proud to work in a UN system, because in this kind of crisis is when you realize why the UN was set up, where every country in the world is thinking of itself. And there's very few organizations, and the UN is one of them, that is thinking about the world, because we're multilateral, right? We're all thinking how do we help the country that we are based in. So the UN family here got together quickly, developed a plan, and one of the things that my administrator was pointing out is procurement of medical supplies. Over a period of 2 weeks, we were able to double the ventilator capacity of this country. We're able to bring millions of PPEs. We're able to bring test kits. Why is that important? It's very difficult for a country alone in a pandemic to be able to get suppliers around the world. The UN can use its huge infrastructure. I give you an example. I am here in UNDP Nigeria. I can pick up the phone and call UNDP China and tell them, please prioritize Nigeria, I want PPEs. Okay. So that is the network the UN brings and to support this country. That's one thing. While we're thinking about the immediate response, and why everybody is rightly focused on saving lives, isolating the sick, treating them, preventing people, and the entire information government has been sending in terms of washing your hands, wearing masks, all these things, although important, we need to think about how tomorrow looks like and the socio-economic damage that this crisis is bringing. People are losing their jobs, and many have lost their jobs. Economies have come into standstill. Oil prices have gone down. So what kind of socio-economic recovery agenda we need to put in place is also part of the work that we are doing at UNDP together with the UN system. And for me personally as an African, the other part that interests me is that this country has to succeed. If Nigeria doesn't succeed, the rest of us in every part of the continent are not going to succeed. So how do we get Nigeria, the giant, to fly and take the rest of us fly together? And that means rethinking the economy, rethinking the structure of a reliance on one commodity, and opening up the economy for foreign direct investment. So there's many things that can be done, and it's an opportunity, I think, to take advantage of this crisis and think of a new and a robust and a rich Nigeria after this.
Besides the fact that you're here under the UN structure, let's look at henceforth after COVID-19 or post-COVID-19, Africa and the world. Do you think they need to redefine it?
I think Africa has the most unbelievable opportunity out of this COVID crisis. We will suffer. I'm not minimizing the human cost, which is going to be great. Many Africans have already died. Many Africans are sick. But this is the opportunity to rethink about what tomorrow looks like. The world will change. We will not go back to the world of pre-COVID. If the world is changing, and the world pre-COVID, Africa was a marginal player. Its economy is small. Its contribution in terms of climate change, greenhouse gases, was very small, but also been impacted larger than everywhere else. So for me, if you look about the entire totality of development and geopolitical relationship, this is time for Africa. Our time is here, and that time means that we need to be ahead of the curve in terms of the societies we want to create, the economies we want to create, and how we want to trade with each other, and how we want to build a better shared future together.
What if we choose not to be proactive?
What is who's not?
What if we choose, as an African continent, the leadership, choose not to be proactive based on what you're saying?
Well, we have no choice. I think we will be shouting and making a lot of noise. You will have to make a lot of noise. Everybody is watching. Will have to make a noise. This is our opportunity, and our opportunity means, I understand some people will be skeptical and say, "Oh, we've in this continent many times done everything to miss an opportunity." I think, but this time, where the entire world is rethinking about the relationship they want to have, Africa, this is our time, and we need to stand up. And standing up means, let's use Nigeria. Nigeria has the most smartest people in any sector. I mean, you check any sector in the world, you'll see a Nigerian somewhere. Nigeria has unbelievable arable land. You can have agriculture here that feeds half of the continent. Nigeria is big, it's a huge internal market. So there's a lot of opportunities, and I think there's no gap in terms of our what we can do. The only thing that is stopping us is our imagination, and this is where I think all of us need to see post-COVID agenda as an agenda for transformation for this country and for the continent.
Okay, within the ambit of information flow within the period, what do you make of knowledge, ignorance, conspiracy in all this?
Yes, I mean, one of the drawbacks of the internet and all the freedoms it has brought, and it has removed a lot of asymmetry in terms of information flow. Anybody anywhere in the world can get information and be an active participant in the political life. I am on Twitter. You see how active Nigerians are on Twitter, holding all of us accountable. I get held accountable all the time. And one of the things I'm going to be held accountable is the basket fund. So I welcome it. But there's other negative part of this, is the fake news culture of misinformation. And fake news kills. It's no joke when people start putting conspiracies and not following preventative measures as announced by government. So for me, the conspiracies, I am not a big fan of conspiracies. We wait until really for us to know what has happened from WHO guidelines today and what WHO has said and other scientists have said. We know where the coronavirus started. Wet markets, that is what we have been told in Wuhan. After this, we will review everything. We will review how we have responded, how everybody has responded. We'll review how this virus started and where it started from. But I think for us in the middle of a crisis, I think conspiracy theories are not very helpful. What is helpful now for all of us to do is to prevent, follow the guidelines as announced by government, socially distance, wash our hands, and when we show symptoms, call the authorities, and let's defeat this virus, and so that this country can go back to and do much greater things than where we are now.
Those in government and those who do the following, there is a very strong relationship there. There's a social contract, but most times the followers appear a bit anxious. They want quick results. The expectations are so high. How can you stem the anxiety as we move on?
In terms of
achieving results. They want results quick. But government say take it easy, it will come.
I can tell you that is the bargain of democracy. You are elected, people expect higher things, and especially in a connected country like this, people will ask for more and more and more. And I think the job of those officials who are elected is to explain, to engage with the citizens, but I will never fault the citizens to want quick action, even if that is not possible all the time. I think wanting quick actions is a sign of ambition, and I think it's a good thing to have.
MOHAMED, YAHYA, it was having you on Diplomatic Ties.
Thank you very much.
Like you said, we hope and believe that post-COVID-19 will be transformational for Africa.
And for this country. So I'm very hopeful. I call myself Niger optimist.
Okay.
I see great things in this country, and with all of you and with this vast country, I think the future can only be brighter. Thank you for having me.
That's the package on Diplomatic Ties today, and he says he's Niger optimist and post-COVID will be transformational for Africa. We hope to key in. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.